Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. All board members accounted for. Administrators same. Anyone have any additions to the agenda? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve it as shown.
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Motion by Pat. Seconded by Jerry. Any further discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Just a little brief recognition. We got some scouts in here this evening, and I think working on their communications badge. Mark,
Yep.
would you like to speak for just a moment and tell us what you're here for, or is that not part of your job description?
Sure. We got 5 boys. One more will be sneaking in when he gets back from his math league meet. And the last one is at the funeral, unfortunately. They're working on a communications merit badge. And one of their requirements is to attend a city council or school board meeting and practice active listening skills.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for coming, boys.
Thank you.
Okay, we look, next one is the approval of the board minutes for October 22 and November 12.
I make a motion to approve
Motion by Brenda. Seconded by Kurt. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Under scheduled presenters, a representative from Abdo and Myers is here to discuss the audit. And I think you've all got one, right?
Yep, everybody should have one. I'm Brad Faltisick with Abdo. I handed out the audit reports before you came, and you should have gotten an electronic copy in your packets as well. So if you read through it, I'm sure word by word, so you have a lot of questions for me tonight. But you should have two reports. One's a management letter, one's the audit report. The one that has the cover that has the numbers down the sides are a management letter, and that just gives a high-level summary of everything that's in the audit report itself. So that's primarily what I'll be going through tonight. I will point out just a couple things in the financial statements themselves if you want some more detail, but primarily I'll just be going through that management letter. So if you open that up to the first page, the first page of that just gives a description of what we're doing in performing the audit, and that is give an opinion on your financial statements, determine whether they're in accordance or prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And when we look at materiality there, so we're not looking at every transaction, so we're looking, are they materially stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So we are giving you an unqualified opinion this year, which we have in the past as well. That is the opinion you're looking for. That means that we feel that they are stated appropriately and that there are no material changes that should be made to the report. Also on that first page, we talk about any significant audit findings. As part of the audit process, we do look at your internal controls and test also some state statute requirements that the state auditor puts out. They give us a checklist of things that we need to look for in going through the audit. If there's anything in your internal controls that we feel that you as a board should know, we'll mention that in this audit, in the management letter. We're not giving an opinion on your internal controls necessarily, though we do point out items where we think you should know about. In regards to the state statute requirements, again, they give us a list, or the state auditor gives us a list of items that we need to go through, so we'll test as part of the audit requirements. On page 2, we report the first internal control finding, and this is a finding that is pretty common with schools of your size and the staff that you have. Internal control, or this is the segregation of duties ones as it relates to preparation of financial statements. So this is, we have to step back and take a look. Could management prepare these financial statements with all the required disclosures and everything in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles? Could they prepare them, and is there oversight to review those So is there a segregation there where basically two people would be able to review what everything that should be in here and the other person preparing them, separate from the person that's recording all the transactions. So really there is not that separation of duties here. We prepare the financial statements as part of the audit process, which we do for probably 85 to 90% of our clients. There are some standards that came out probably 5 years ago now that really wanted to define the role of the auditor and management. And that's where really this finding started showing up, because they wanted a formal area where we could really explain the difference between what management's role is and what's the auditor's role. And it is management's role to prepare the financial statements. It's auditor's role to audit that. So though management does review everything that's in the financial statements and agrees to it and approves it, we still are the ones preparing it. So that's where the finding comes. So it's not a huge deal, but it's just something for you to be aware of. On page 3, the second finding, authorized signers. And this is what we confirm your bank, your balances at the bank at the end of each year. And at the same time, we ask the bank to confirm who the signers are on the account. The previous superintendent came up as one of the signers still on the account as of last year, which should have been taken off he should have been taken off by the time we did the audit. So he was still on there. Let Josh know he took care of it as soon as we let him know. But I guess, like Josh said, you expect that gets taken care of when you send them the change. But it didn't. So that's just another thing that you should be aware of. Follow up with the bank and make sure they're updating those as in court appropriately. Page 4. This is actually page 4 and part of page 5. These are just follow-ups on the previous findings we had last year. And if they're on here, that means they've been corrected. So we had 4 findings that we were reporting last year that we're not reporting this year because you did take the appropriate steps to correct them. So that's a good sign. You're looking at what we're recommending and you're taking action on it. So those are all good. Then if you want to just flip, the rest of it's kind of standard language that you can read, but if you want to flip to page 7, that's where we start getting into the actual results of the financials. And that's your general fund. So this is just the total revenues, total expenditures, budgeted amounts compared to actual. So your total revenues you budgeted at just over 10 million, came in under 10 million. So total revenues were $172,000 under budget. Some of that had to do with the tax shift, again, moving, or the variance in the property taxes was $143,000, which had to do with the tax shift. And there were some other variances here that I've outlined. Revenues from state sources were $18,000 under budget. Other local and county revenues were $11,000 under budget. And property taxes were $143,000 under budget. So again, a lot of that has to do with the tax shift adjustment. If you look in last year's report, the tax shift adjustment had the opposite effect. So you had a much higher, you had a revenues in excess of your budget last year. This year, the tax shift didn't have quite as much impact because they adjusted about the same as what they did last year. So the impact wasn't as great. But at some point, if that shift ever gets reduced, you'll see a positive increase. Then on your expenditure side, budgeted just over 10 million with there too, and spent 9.7 million. So you were $345,000 under budget in your expenditures. So you're really watching what you were spending once you did your budget. The major variances there were capital expenditures. The last bullet there, capital expenditures were $211,000 under budget, and debt service expenditures were $121,000 under budget. So just take a look at your budgets each year, make sure you're and comparing to last year, make sure your budgets are where they should be. But overall, you had budgeted a increase of $177,000 in your fund balance. Actually increased fund balance $250,000, so went from $891 to $1.1 million that year, and your fund balance did. That's important because the last paragraph there, we recommend a fund balance between 8 and 16% in fund balance compared to your following year's budget or your planned expenditures. If you turn to the next page, you're at 11.7%. Up from 2008, you were at 4.2%. So each year you've been increasing that that indicator. So it shows that you are doing the right things within your budget to get your fund balance to where you should be. So you're right in that 1 to 2 month reserve. You can see part of that increase, a little bit of that increase was a result of reduced expenditures and compounded with that increased fund balance. So if your expenditures were constant with the 2011 number, it would have been 11% even, I think. So you were at that 11.71% this year. So you're definitely going in the right direction since 2008. 2009, this is the chart on the tax shift. You can see in 2011 there was $679,000 shifted, and then 2012 it was $611,000. So the big change was from 10 to 11, which we saw the big change in our income or revenues. But from 11 to 12, it was a $68,000 difference there. So it didn't impact it quite as much, but it did decrease your tax revenues. Page 10 is your, again, still the general fund revenues by source for the last 5 years. I just added up your 2008 numbers, and they were at 10.3 million. Your 2012 expenses were at 9.9 million. So it's about a 6% or 4% reduction in your expenditures overall from 2008. I think that becomes important because the next page, page 11, your expenditures, and they also decreased 4% from the previous, or for 2008. So your revenues and expenditures are following each other. Your revenues aren't increasing or decreasing by 2%, and your expenditures decreasing by 1% or something like that. I mean, they're following each other. I think you're budgeting what your income you're receiving. So I think you're doing a good job budgeting in that aspect. But overall, most of these lines are pretty consistent from year to year, or from at least from last year. You did have some jumps in a couple of years on the capital outlay, but that's when you had the big projects going in. Okay, page 12. Top there is the debt service fund. Your ending fund balance was $360,000 at year end, which was a decrease from the previous year. But with your debt service funds, you just want to make sure you're levying the required amounts based on the bond documents and make sure you're going to have enough resources to pay the bonds off in the future. So far you have, but you just want to continue to monitor that to the end of the bond so you don't run out of money in that debt service fund. Then we have our special revenue funds, the food service and community service funds. Food service fund increased fund balance $10,000 to finish at $70,000 at year end, which we'd recommend about a month's worth of reserve in the special revenue fund. So that would indicate about $54,000. So you're a little over that month reserve there too. So a good reserve balance in that food service fund. Community service fund, same story. You increased the fund balance there, $104,000 this year. Ended at $173,000. So again, 1 month reserve would be $45,000, and you're at that $173,000 mark. So a substantial fund balance in the community service fund. Page 13, your capital projects fund was closed during the year, so that was done. Other items we have here, take a look at your fund balances, your expenditures, and then compare your expenditures to the average daily membership. So how much are you spending per pupil from your general fund, food service, and community service funds, your operating funds. This excludes the debt service fund. So in 2009, you were spending just over $9,000 per student. In 2012, you were at that $9,600 per student mark. I did take a look at 3 other schools that we do, kind of about the same ADMs. School District 2895, which is Jackson County. They have ADMs at 1181, so pretty comparable to where you are, 1131. They're spending $10,360 per student, so you're under them. ISD 282, which is St. Anthony, so they're a little bit bigger school district at 1,700. they're spending $10,940. And then I also looked at a smaller one, which is Cleveland School District. We audited as well, which they're spending $11,446. So I think compared to the other school districts that we're auditing, you're one of the lower ones as far as expenses per student. So I think you're doing a good job there as far as managing those costs with the revenues that you're receiving. That's really for the all for the management letter. Any questions on that? Otherwise, we'll turn into the report itself. Nothing so far. Then if you want to turn to page 93 of the audit report. And it is skipping quite to the end, but this is where it shows all your restrictions for each program. You see the only restriction you have is the health and safety, which you have $77,000 in there at year end. Most everything else, well, you do have some committed for separation benefits, $144,000, and assigned and unassigned fund balance. But most of your fund balances are unrestricted dollars in the general fund. So that's something you monitor each year. You want none of your balances are in the negative, so that's good. And then your other funds there as well. If anyone asks you what do you have restricted for certain items, this is where you would turn. Then the other page I want you to turn to is 76. And this is, I always refer to this, if you have any questions on any variances in specific line items, this is going to be the most detail for your general fund in the report itself. So you can see for administration salaries, you budgeted original budget was 380, final budget was 417, you spent 426. So just $8,500 over budget in that category. So you can go by program and it's broken down by the different categories. So you can take a look at any of those, and if you have any specific questions on any of those, we can try to answer those. May need Josh's assistance right here, but on the spot. But this is where you would go for any of those types of questions. You can see in the first line there, the property taxes were $143,000 under budget. Last year's report, I think they were $600,000 over budget because of the tax shift. So this is kind of the opposite effect with that $68,000 change this year. Okay. Other than that, I just appreciate the staff help with the audit. I think it was a pretty smooth process this year again. Made a few adjustments once we got out here, but nothing like we have in the past. I don't think. I think Josh has done a good job improving each year and being more ready. So appreciate Beth, Josh, and Lori's help throughout the audit process. So, but take any questions. Otherwise, that's all I have. Anyone?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's included under fringe benefits?
That'd be like health insurance, kind of those type of benefits,
Actual.
taxes, those things. Federal taxes.
So I think every year that I've been on the board, we've had some processes to overcome, and you seem to indicate they're minor, and we've always resolved them, but we've never quite got the totally clean one. So that's hard to do, apparently.
It is, especially that preparation of financial statement one. It's tough to do, unless you're basically preparing the report yourself. But that authorized signer one, it's kind of you should be monitoring it. So I mean, it's not it's something you need to watch. But
And how do you recommend us, when we are so short-staffed the way it is, and you obviously hear about in the news and you know, these schools that are running into trouble, how do we separate that any more than, I mean, do you have any recommendations for that?
I always recommend the board just pay attention to what the transactions are that you see. If anything looks unusual, make sure you're questioning it and getting a good answer and not just getting bluffed for something that really doesn't make sense, make sure you're actually asking those in-depth questions. And anytime, who's ever in that position of oversight or reviewing, make sure you're doing that. The finance committee, make sure you're looking through those transactions and looking at those things. Comparing from the reports you got the previous month, make sure things aren't getting adjusted the previous month that you might not see in the current month's activity. So you're making sure that nothing's been changed throughout the year as well. So just pay attention and ask about anything unusual that you don't expect.
You guys are great to work with, so thank you.
Thanks, you too.
With that too, it's a lot of work, I know, and usually that we end up pushing back as far as we can so we get as much done before you get out. So I don't know if you appreciate always coming out in September, but I appreciate the help that we've got over the years to help me out not only with some of the more difficult entries, but to figure them out. But just the patience too when we get here. Sometimes we have to wait until I get things done for you, but things all worked out well.
Yeah, it is. Some of the entries that we help assist on too are the adjusting the state aids, which those state aid numbers seem to change weekly. No, about probably twice a month after year end. So we always try to get the most up-to-date information in the report. So even if Josh had it adjusted prior to us coming out, we still might recommend another adjustment because of the most current reports we're getting from the state at the time. So some of the adjustments do result because of that too. So, but yeah, it's been a good relationship, I think, throughout the year as well. Josh calls us for questions throughout the year.
Well, good information. Thank you for your time, Brett.
All right, thank you.
That was a presentation or discussion, so we don't have any action on this. Okay. Moving down to number 6 is our finance report. Josh?
Finance report is attachment B in the handout there. First page is going to be the cash flow worksheet and just kind of summarize where we are, cash on hand. A couple things to note up in the top right-hand corner would be the outstanding loans, and at the time there are no aid anticipation certificates outstanding. There will be some issued at the end of, well, January 9th will be the sale date, and we'll get some funds towards aid anticipation. As you see at the cash flow, it's relatively strong balance right now. And what happened is we had some payments through the state, some catch-up payments from the prior year. So we got a good balance in there. But what happens is we get to our debt service payments at the end of January, and once those go out the door, the cash starts to go towards negative. At the beginning of February, when the debt service payments are made, we're at about $48,000 positive cash. This is prior to the anticipation funds coming in, which will be $1.5 million. And that's the anticipated amount that we'll need in order to keep cash positive throughout the rest of the fiscal year. And actually into the next fiscal year, we won't receive all those funds back until August or September when we have to repay the anticipation certificates. The interest rate right now at the bank is 0.15%, which borrowing rate right now is actually not too bad of a rate, and maybe actually you're earning a little better interest by having it sit in our checking account than it is if we go out for some short-term CDs. It is something I can take a look at again just to kind of evaluate if it's something we can do, but again, it would have to be a short-term as the funds will be needed at the end of January to pay the debt service. Next page is just going to be a summary of the last month that was reconciled. So you've got October 2012 versus October 2011. In both months, the anticipation certificates that we had outstanding have been paid off. So the cash balance you see is actual general fund balance, cash on hand, not borrowed. We are about $400,000 to $500,000 ahead in the general fund, and you'll see when we get to the detail, we had rather large payments in the ideas from the state to kind of account for that large increase in the general fund. Again, there's just money that was caught up from the previous fiscal year, but it does make a significant bump in October. Food service, as Brad talked about when we went through the audit, is doing well, about $9,000 ahead of where we were at this point last year. Community ed, again, as mentioned in the audit, is doing well, almost $100,000 ahead of where we were at this point last year. And really, we talked about the large tax shift in the general fund last year of over $600,000. It had gotten so large that it affected community service. Usually that's not the case. And that's the reason why community ed last year was down significantly from prior years. So really where he's at right now in the community ed is more on par to what we've seen in the past. Building construction fund is complete. The debt service, about $30,000, $40,000 ahead of where we were at this point last year. The last 2 years now, and going forward to the next tax levy, we've made a manual adjustment to decrease the amount of tax levy for the state, or from the county, for the debt service. And the reason being is that when we send out our debt service levy, we actually collect 105%. In the theory being that there are some that would be delinquent and you may get 100%. We've been fortunate in our area that we get over that 100%, so we've been able to do a manual adjustment to decrease that. And it helps so that our tax increase isn't as great as it may be if the debt service were to be the full 105%. But like Brad said, we monitor it and keep an eye to make sure we have enough funds to pay the debt service payments when they come due. Debt, trust and agency is a scholarship fund, about $10,000 ahead where we were at this point last year. The OPEB trust is, again, that fund we have set up for helping pay other employee benefits such as retiree benefits. We had made a withdrawal of $126,000 out of there last year. That and with some changing with interest, we're about $150,000 less than we were at this point last year. And then the OPEB debt service is similar to the debt service payment on our buildings. We need to pay debt on that OPEB bond. The next couple pages are just going to be the detail of what happened. If you want to see what's going in and out during the regular month, we write batches of checks on Fridays for utilities and some services, a lot of officials' fees and dues and memberships, those types of things might go on a weekly basis. We try to save the larger bills for the board meetings. There you'll see the receipts of $1.5 million in October 2012 versus $1.1 million of October 2011. And that was that increase of revenue from the state and the IDEAS payment. And that accounts really for the big increase between last year and this year for the general fund. The other funds really aren't too significant, at least as far as in terms of change from prior month. But if you do have any questions, I can do my best to answer what you have.
We had, not directly related to this, but we had an increase from what the audit says in our reserves.
Yep, and
Seems to be a pretty static number. What's 890,000 today might be 600,000 in February. So it always seems to be up and down.
yep, you kind of said. You really can't tell until you get that picture at the end of the year and you get the audit. The one fund that you mentioned there, the undesignated, that really is the fund, if you're looking at in general fund, the dollars that we can actually use to spend. So general fund balance is a little over $1 million right now. When you take out things that are designated, like health and safety, retiree benefits, separation benefits, you're looking at $738,000 roughly in the general fund that's really undesignated that we can use for whatever would fit within the statute of general fund spending. That's an increase of about $27,000 last year. So if you were to look at just the undesignated money and stuff that we have to play with, not really play with, but to use for things, an increase of about $27,000 from last year to this year.
And that's what we used last year. We used part of that reserve.
No, it would actually come out of this year's budget. The fiscal year 13 budget is the one that we've taken out the $100,000. So if everything holds true to what we have budgeted, when we come to this time next year to have the audit, the general fund should decrease $100,000. Unless we, again, perform well and we're able to kind of watch expenditures, and we don't quite go that low. But at least $100,000 is maybe we could anticipate.
Anything else for Josh?
So I guess kind of talking what Bob was talking about then. So the increase is 345, but after everything's taken out, we're down to 27,000. So it's an increase.
Well, I guess when I look at it, I look at what's just undesignated that we can use. You know, things that are designated for health and safety, I can only use those dollars for health and safety. For assigned for employee benefits, I can only use them for that. So I guess that's the number that I look for. Overall, the increase, I think, about $250,000 would have ended up the net for in the general fund.
So the 11.71%, because they look at the gross then.
Yep.
And I know we're always talking about keeping a certain dollar amount there. So I'm assuming then this is what everyone uses as far as the number that the district should have
Yeah, so
set aside.
if you're looking at things like statutory operating debt or,
Yeah.
you know, keeping ourselves kind of fluid throughout the year, that's the number you want to look at,
Okay.
that 8 to 16%. So flying that 12 is really kind of ideal. The only kind of caveat to that is when they hold back anticipation time, that's where you go to borrow. You know, on the books, we look good, but cash flow, we have to borrow. This is kind of the other side of that sword.
But the plan is, I mean, it looks like we've got about.
We're doing well.
Just, yeah, right in the middle.
Yep.
Okay, any other comments? I'd look for a motion to approve the finance report.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Pat, seconded by Rob. Other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Moving down to old business, technology wiring project. Beth?
You guys have talked about this before. I thought we had a really good discussion last time with Jerry and Dave, and we had a finance committee, or not a finance, facility committee meeting, and a lot of good conversation there. Jerry brought up some really good points about going out and kind of sharpening up pencils and making sure we're getting the best bang for the buck, like we have on other projects. I thought Dave went above and beyond on that and kind of followed through on a lot of things. Jerry helped out, contacted some people he knew as well. And the final wiring project is listed here. We do need to move forward with something. We had interruption of service again today and yesterday. We're getting, are they power surges, Dave?
It just seems to be back in this area.
Right.
It's not throughout the whole building or the district or different stuff. But it's been a problem, and we depend on it for grades, for attendance, for HVAC, for tests, well, we all know sitting here that when your computer isn't working, it's a bad day. So we need constant, uninterruptible power to the systems, and through the technology committee, facility committee, and stuff like that, and all the research is done, we feel that this is our best avenue to achieve that.
So really, you know, this has been talked about before. This is the final recommendation that both the technology and the facility committee are coming up with. We really have checked into a lot of options, making sure it's exactly what we need. It would be my recommendation to go forward with this. I'm not sure if Jerry wants to mention anything. He was on the committee as well.
On the power supply management side, I did, like you said, did some checking, and we're getting a very fair price. Took a little while to get all the pricing and everything. Ryan's from this good deal.
Okay, this is an action item. Other comments, discussion?
This will obviously increase upload or download of internet information. I mean, I heard that there are times where, you know, they have to wait sometimes 5-10 minutes for everyone to be online for certain classes because of slow router or slow upkeep or uptake of information. Is that right?
This shouldn't have anything to do with that. That's internet speed, and this is a power
That
issue.
would be
Just a power issue,
More
so-
bandwidth and things that we need
Right,
as well.
correct.
And that's an issue as well.
But until we get this fixed, I mean, this is kind of the core. We need to
Okay.
get this fixed so that we can move ahead with the technology direction that we're going. With that said, those are things that need to come up too, as well as updating other technology issues. But this one is kind of one of those core things. It needs to be done. To have this separate room, I mean, if you went back and saw it right now, it's kind of in an interesting situation, so.
Okay.
Well, I'll make a motion that we move forward with the technology wiring project at a cost of $19,625.
Motion by Pat,
I'll second.
seconded by Jerry. Other comments?
And where do we have this in the budget?
We don't. This is one of those items that came up that we don't anticipate. We don't like to have these things come up. Dave has reworked some things, he and I, with some funding money and funding. Came out as funny. We don't have any funny money. And Dave, within his budget, we're going to be able to cover this.
Okay, any other comments? All in favor of this approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Thanks for the work on the two committees as well, for reviewing this. New business, under the consent agenda, these items are considered routine and enacted under one motion. So everyone have a chance to look at the lunch report, personnel attendance areas, and is there any questions, concerns that you might have?
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion by Brenda, seconded by Pat. Other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Attachment F, approval of the expenditures.
How about 40737, marketing, Hanson marketing, is that for signage or?
That's our community ed handbooks. Do you call them handbooks?
Brochures.
Brochures, that's a better word, brochures.
And how about 40749, high performance coatings, 8446?
And this was 40749.
40749, yeah.
Check number's 380.
306.
That was,
One more page.
Okay.
that was for painting
Oh,
in the district. Half of it, I think, included some of our storm damage stuff, and the other stuff was other things that we had painted throughout the district.
Check number's 38320, 38321 for marketing and light.
As part of a teacher severance. It, in their contract, $24,000 less any contribution over their life from TSA, so school district and HR.
Check number 38357.
Going in the hospital, so.
Sergeant Paul, go or? Sergeant Paul, go. It's study item.
Oh, yeah, steady on.
And that's reimbursed, the Ed Foundation helps out, cover something too.
Yeah, Reinhardt food tends to be a big bill, $28,000. Since Coma.
The one for running the diesel?
Yeah, fuel for bus driver.
I'll make a motion for approval of the expenditures.
Thank you, Chris. Motion by Kurt, second by Jerry. Okay. Other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Approval of a change in the school calendar day for April 9 and 10. April 9 will be an 8:30 a.m. PLC late start day instead of April 10th.
And that's worded a little incorrectly. Medford was supposed to host the music competition on April 9th. They are unable to do so because they're also doing student council on the same day. So we have offered to use our facility for them to do that. That means releasing the students at 1 o'clock to make that happen. Because April 10th is already a late start PLC day, we would like to release early, kill two birds with one stone, allow the students to go home, make that our teacher PLC time instead of that Wednesday morning. So it's a very small change. So on the 9th, a release at 1 o'clock instead of the late start on the 10th.
I make a motion to approve the change in the school calendar.
I'll second.
Motion by Brenda, seconded by Pat. Other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Attachment H, approval of the spring head coaches.
I'll make a motion to approve the spring head coaches.
Motion by Pat, seconded by Jerry. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approval of the application tracker software.
I'm going to pass a few things out here. We are still doing applications in an old format. People still come in and do them paper and pencil. We need to move into the 21st century and do those online for a lot of other reasons as well. There's veterans preference issues that are out there. People are calling in and our office is completely understaffed saying, "Hi, Lori, can you check to make sure my application for para substitute, I'd like to move it over and make sure that it's also in the bus substitute list." Finding those applications, sorting those applications is truly just an absolute, it just can't, we cannot keep doing this. So I've listed all of the kind of the positives to AppyTrack. The total cost on it, I know you're all going to want to know, is $680. I can't hire a secretary, a receptionist, anything for that amount of money for the year. It allows, for example, if Tim opens up a math position, and what happened this year is we had a math teacher sign the contract, you approved them, the next day they resigned. He then can go into the database and search out math teachers or something like that. It really does a lot of things for us. Veterans preference, if you haven't heard, there's a couple schools that are in legal contention with that. You have to be very careful on those applications to do a point system with veterans and things like that. It just rules out any errors, human errors that can happen. Filing them, where do you file them if they want to be considered for 3 different positions? The number of applicants that Derek will get for one elementary position is in the hundreds. We need a system that's online and a database that's available for us. It's a very small cost for something that every school has, and to be in legal compliance, I would strongly recommend we get something.
Almost seems like it could save the district money.
It could save the district money, absolutely. Or a lawsuit, or any situation where we don't have something on file and we can't find it, so.
So does this mean that everything you have on file would go into the system currently to become current? or
We
would
can
you
work
go-
with AppyTrack on that. It would be moving forward at this point is where I'd really want to go with it for right now.
Okay,
I'd worry about the rest of that. We've already kind of got those situated.
okay.
I don't know if you mentioned this, Beth, but I know another advantage to this is that if an applicant applies, fills out the application for one school, then they can transfer that information to other applications.
Absolutely.
So that makes it easier for applicants to apply to our school if they've already filled it out for another school.
We talked about that a little bit too, Brenda. That's a great point. We feel like we're missing some applicants because we've made the process so tedious. I mean, you want them to go through that process, but we've made it so much extra work that I hope we're not losing good candidates. So you're absolutely right. That's a good point.
Okay, team, what's your thought on this?
I think the $680 spent is going to be covered by the costs that we're already spending for the administrators to go through all the applications. And really sort down real quick to qualified applicants.
We are in year number 2 of not having Sam at that front desk. And there's little things that we're just feeling, and this is one of them. So it's a pretty minimal cost for, it's a simple, easy fix.
Just to gain access for teachers that are on call.
That's the next item, that's a
Oh, this
separate
is
item. This
different.
is
This is
just,
totally
the
different.
Apple Track is the
Oh,
first
okay.
part. I'm gonna
All
ask
right.
you for teachers that call later.
That's separate from that.
Well, I'll make a motion for the approval of the application tracker software for $680.
I'll second.
Motion by Jerry, seconded by Brenda. Any other discussion?
So I guess just going forward, so is it like a scan system, or is it somebody gonna sit down manually just input it, and then you still file the hard copies, or?
No, we won't accept hard copies anymore. Everything
Oh.
goes into the system. Even if they want to send a hard, or an email or something, it all goes into the system. It's remarkable. Everything's at the principal's fingertips, or if Dave wants to get in, look through for custodian, I mean, everything's there.
So the applications have to be electronic then too?
Yes, everything is, which is what you want people to do.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, didn't know that.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. All in favor of this approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. The approval of the contracted substitute teacher service. Okay.
Yeah, we're kind of running into a situation where we're struggling and finding in some areas substitutes. I know that Derek, Tim, we've all been in classrooms this year and we very much enjoy that. And that actually can be a highlight of our day. But I don't think Lori loves when I'm out of the office too much. And poor Jake, he's down there. We got him running all kinds of things. And I know I'm speaking for the principals here, but we do enjoy doing that for a period here or there. But what happens is it slows our processes down too. And we're already so short in so many of those areas. I listed a lot of items on here, and I also put a spreadsheet from Teachers on Call on the back. The biggest items that we're running into with substitute teachers is some of them, once they've worked a day here, they typically they could possibly go in and file for unemployment because if you don't consistently use them. Believe it or not, we have had that happen. Lori, it's true.
That's the way it is currently.
Right. So if we go with a Teachers on Call, and all of you have heard the nice ladies come in and do their presentation, and we kind of went back and forth if we needed it or not. Secretaries were calling, finding people. If we couldn't find a para sub, well, we would just figure it out or pull someone or things like that. This is really a system that allows us to get rid of the FICA, get rid of the unemployment. We can secure subs in advance. It eliminates our office staff calling. They'll handle all the background checks, which I think is really important for our substitutes. This allows a teacher, if they get up with a child and their kid is puking at 2 a.m. and they know they're not coming in, we are the only school in HBO that doesn't have this. Not that that matters. Mark, I'm sure you can say in Lakeville, you would call into a system and they would get you a sub, correct?
Oh yeah, it's all computerized.
You have to have this. When do you start calling a sub and then they get 9 calls? This system allows our subs to not be irritated with Cannon Falls schools because they get 1 phone call, they accept it on the computer, they take the job or don't take the job, and then they don't get any more calls. It's a really good system. I need a bigger pool of substitute teachers. I need quality substitute teachers. There is a cost savings after it's all done. It is going to cost $1,000 to set this up, so there is initial setup cost. But after that, the savings are there. We do run into, and I wrote that at the bottom, we do run into one contract issue that I can find. We currently have it written in our contract that teachers that retire from Cannon Falls schools get a much higher rate of pay. Teachers on Call will work with us until the contract is done this next year and continue to pay them, which I think is the right thing to do, pay them the extra amount that we have got in the contract. But after that, we'll have to readjust that, not only from a financial standpoint, but also to make the system work better for Teachers on Call. When Mr. Sesker was here, we looked at it. Last year, we looked at it. We're kind of at that point. And principals, if you've got anything to say here, please jump in because we're kind of at a point where we need something to help us out with para and teacher subs.
Have we ever had to pay out unemployment?
We haven't paid it out. We've won all of those, if they're winning or losing,
Yep.
They haven't been awarded
Right.
the unemployment, but it's coming. It's happening more and more all the time. I would anticipate it continuing to happen. So if this company wants to work with that, they can set it up differently than we can.
If we end up having to lose one of those, it's going to cost us $1,000.
Well,
I guess that's the way I look at it.
I'm on the Goodhue County District Board, and they have got Teachers on Call. And one of the good things, too, is that teachers are able to put down their list of preferences so you can still use your subs from the area to be your first preferences. So they would be called first for position. So And they've been pleased with the service overall and pleased with the quality of the subs and just having that all handled for the teachers and the administration has really helped them out a lot. They have noticed that absences have gone up and I think the cost has been a little higher than they anticipated or budgeted for, so I'd want to, if we do this, I think it's a good service, but to really watch that and to have, at the end of the year, have a report on the actuals for that.
I would hope absences wouldn't go up because, I mean, you're using a service, but we can't, that's where it gets really hard to budget. How much do you put in for subs every year? If teachers have 3 personal days, you should budget for that. Do you budget for them using all of their sick days? I mean, it's just it's a number you're kind of shooting for, but to have this service, it's going to be a cleaner line, and we'll have a better budget system because I'll know exactly what I spent for subs every single year. So
It could be partly because they're able to get subs, and in the past they may not have been able to, and then teachers have not been able to take time off when they needed it, but that is one of the things they do.
So Beth, what is the cost for TOC? What
it's
is the cost?
$1,000 setup,
Okay.
and then they'll charge us every time we get a sub, but we would pay that anyway.
And there's a certain percentage, is it, I see 1.24% that goes to TOC.
That's correct, I mean, each time we get a sub.
Okay.
But it's so minimal. I mean, you still, every district I checked with ended up still saving money with it. Goodhue County District, I was actually at that meeting when you guys were talking about the increase, but I think that's because you had so many more staff joined on too. So it was hard for Sherry to kind of figure out, if you have more staff, you're obviously gonna have more subs too. So it was kind of a,
So if someone's, say they're out, been teachers out for 45 days, just as a number here, will they cycle teachers in and out too? Is that something they can do, or is it you're here for the 45 days, so there's a consistency of one teacher? Is that
oh,
something
we
they
always
can-
try to do that. If we can, if Derek had a teacher that went out on a maternity leave or something like that, of course, we would always try to, it's always a long-term subbing position, right? They work with the administrators, whatever they want in that position, or say we get a sub that we don't necessarily like, they work with us immediately. If we say that sub did not work out, we would prefer not to have them back in the district, they don't get called back to Cannon Falls. We still have all the say on everything, which I really like. She also, on the phone today, did confirm she'd be willing to give us an opt-out. If we don't like the contract, if we don't like this service, she'll let us opt out. She knows we'll like it, so she's willing to write that
At
in.
any point,
At the end of the year.
it's only 1 year.
Yeah, she wants us to at least try it. If we quit in a month, that doesn't make any sense, but we could work it out for the year, and then she would let us opt out if we wanted to.
Is it a year-by-year contract normally?
It's every 2 years is what they typically like to do, because they negotiate it with their teachers, just like we do. So they negotiate $110 a day for sub rates. They're in that same sort of situation we are. So they like to do 2 years. The only cost on this is the upfront cost, which I do have budgeted actually, so we'd be okay on that.
I make a motion to approve it.
I'll second it.
Motion by Brenda, seconded by Kurt. Other discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Discussion of the Transportation Department. You know, at our last meeting, I just opened it up for conversation that as we look at ways to pare down our costs and make us more efficient, this is certainly one of the areas that we need to look at. We looked at it, we gave it a cursory look, I guess, a couple of years ago, and found that it didn't fit us at that point in time. But on a personal level, I look at this as not only a possible cost savings, but really to make us more efficient as we move forward and take some of the burden off of our total staff if we do move in that direction. But also, we need to take our time on this and look at all avenues before we, give serious consideration to contracts. We asked Beth last time to check with some area schools that did their contract services and see how many there were in our conference, for example, and how they feel about it. I don't know if you have anything to offer.
I got a lot of varied, responses. There's several districts that own and want to continue owning their own school bus system. Smaller schools, you saw it more common. They've only operating 5-6 buses, so that worked out really well for them. Obviously, larger schools, Red Wing around us, things like that, obviously need the contracted services to do that manpower. Just was really tough to do. It was really interesting that Bob had me do that because it made other people kind of look at where we're spending different things within transportation, and I thought that was really, really interesting. So, some really great feedback. I sent the emails to both Rob and Bob from the superintendents that got back to me. Obviously very much like having contracted services. I asked several questions, was there additional, cost or expenditures that they hadn't anticipated? And there weren't any that they hadn't anticipated anyway. But they did allude to that it can cost a district money, and it's really important to have an outside entity come in and do a cost analysis of both sides. And I thought the Red Wing superintendent gave some really good advice on that. So I'm still working on those type of things, doing a little follow through. This is nothing we want to rush into, or we certainly want to cover all our bases. So I guess the report back is we're still in progress, and I'll keep the transportation committee up to date.
I think we'd be remiss in our due diligence if we didn't at least look at the cost to replace our buses. In the past, it's always been most schools' procedure to buy buses as they have money in their fund, and at $75,000 to $85,000 a bus, we've put this off for a number of years. And so, in order to get us back into a rotation that we feel comfortable with, I think to purchase 5 or 6 buses would not be out of the ordinary for us just to catch up. Now at $80,000 times 6, you'd have to understand we don't have that kind of money. So, under a recommendation by our current maintenance group at the bus garage, Rob and I had a chance to talk to a company that is involved with leasing buses. And as an alternative to paying $80,000 a year for the next number of years, which we don't have, are we better off leasing several buses at a time and getting into some costs on that? And, Rob, you were there as well as I. Do you have any input on that?
What I like to, I guess, doing the due diligence, looking at the 3 options of either doing nothing, which we can't do forever because our buses are getting old, going contract services, which we lose all control, and this medium, which is, I guess what I liked about the meeting was it wasn't just leasing, it was really more of a financing, seller finance purchase. Financing for 5 to 8 years and then you own them. So if you've got them for 15 years, you are debt free for the last 10. If you're only going to run them for 12 years, you again are running without payments. So in a way, this option that we looked at today was interesting, and we told them it's a very preliminary stage, but it does kind of give you that middle ground where we can go out and get maybe 3 new buses for the price of less than 1 bus a year and just finance it. And we can look at what they offer for finance. We can also look at locally, maybe there's some type of financing, but it does change that mode of pay cash up front to let's finance it. And that might be a better solution, but again, it's very preliminary.
It goes against what we've seen for a number of years in all districts, where if you don't have it, you don't buy it. We're at a point in our lives right now where we have to do something. And I think that, I call it a lease. It's not officially a lease, I guess, but...
You could.
Rent to own.
Yeah.
But they'll actually do a lease too.
Well, it's tough, when you have the number of buses that are needed, I guess, and you can't even afford to lease those right now because we just don't have that kind of cash flow. But it would represent a huge step forward in us if we could cycle out some of our older buses, I guess, which now are, what would you say some of those older ones are that we would take out of circulation?
Looked at it today, we've got several from 1993, 94.
And again, they pass all the safety inspections. They're safe buses to drive, but we recently okayed a $16,000 or $17,000 Band-Aid for buses, and I think that's our second go-around in a few months. So we spent,
We did 8,000 the year before and 17,000 this last year.
so just, you know, is that $25,000 well spent? Well, we put our buses back on the road, and they passed inspection. So it is well spent, but yet, is that the best bang for the buck we can have? So I guess, unless anybody's got anything different, I guess we just continue on the path here to see what's best for us as a district. And, you know, Beth can continue doing some research for us on behalf, and we just move forward.
I would say I absolutely agree with that. Even a few districts around this area with the lake cities and Kenyon and Wanamago, they no longer own their buses. Goodyear no longer owns their buses. I don't know if that's some of the folks they talk to. I think we continue moving down that path. Let's figure out what is the best solution. I don't think that at this point anybody has the right solution or necessarily even the best solution at this point, but I absolutely agree. I think we need to go on the path to see if it's worth us continuing to keep what we have that's old and we can ill afford to replace at this time.
Well, and to see what the, you know, the state ends up doing with special education funding. Because right now, what's really throwing transportation off the most is transportation of some special needs students that we don't anticipate doing, or we think we're gonna get reimbursement and then we don't, things like that. So it's just kind of weird to see what the state does with some of their mandates as well.
I think we're looking at this both short, medium, and long term for all three of them. You know, we've got land and buildings, insurance, fuel tanks that are buried. There's a lot of things out there to look at. It's not just the buses that are on the road. It's not just the vehicles. There's a lot of things that we've got to take into account. Overhead as well with those maintenance that we may be looking at for that as well. And I think we're going to eventually get Dave involved with that part of it down there and find out, okay, so let's say we do keep buses. What else are we going to have for expenses to house those buses, to heat that shop? You know, and is there another way, a better way?
Are we considering doing a cost analysis on that relatively soon? Having someone come in?
Very soon. I'm waiting for him to get back from his vacation.
It does seem like we've had some issues with the management of the bus scheduling and everything this year more so than the other years.
I feel like we've really got that rectified. Mr. Walls is doing a really nice job. It's running very smoothly. So we're taking baby steps. I think people are pleased again with the department and certainly being extremely fiscally responsible. I mean, really, and a lot of accountability that wasn't there maybe in the past because I didn't know either, but we're really looking into a lot of things. So very, very pleased right now with the transportation department, and our drivers are doing a nice job.
Okay. This is, it's not an action item, I guess, so we'll move on from there. Thank you. Thanks for the input and encouragement. We'll move forward with that. Item H, review of the superintendent's evaluation. I sent you all the outcome of that. I hope you got it. I'm not real good at attachments, so I can sometimes send a note without an attachment. I'm supposed to be one on there, but gosh. I don't think you opened it. I don't think you understand it. There's two other people got there. Using a template from the MSBA, we began an evaluation for our superintendent, and at least for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a not quite a requirement, but an encouragement that we do a SUP evaluation on a regular basis, and I would say that it's probably been, well, Sester was still here, so it's been at least a couple of years. And the second reason behind it is that at present Beth has an interim status, which goes until July 1st. And in order for us to move forward with that, and that 2 years was the conversation we had about the interim status, that'll be up soon. In order for us to discuss a long-term contract, we also have to to see how the evaluation ended up. So, you know, it's at least a couple fold on here. The areas were several on this template, and some of them, I can tell by board response, weren't really germane to us. But still, you know, we included all of them. And it runs from a liaison as being our liaison to the community and the district, to overseeing our financials, employee items, strategic planning among all the areas, and leadership capabilities. And they number many. There's probably 40+ questions on here that range, and they go from a range of 1 to a range of 5, with 1 being unacceptable, with 5 being outstanding. So I would always consider anything at least 3.5 and above as being a pretty good score, and a 4 is a very good score. A 5 would be exemplary. The range in scores from Ms. Geese, and I know this is a really uncomfortable situation for you because you have to sit here and take it, but it's been extremely positive. We were at a low of 3 on a 1 through 5 to absolutely several in the 4 range, and almost the balance of them being in the 4 range and plus. We've had 4 2s, 4 6s, 4 8s, a couple of 5s. So, you know, in my mind, it represents a very strong score and a very strong outcome, and it means, you know, for the district, you're doing an outstanding job by the numbers of the board. Having said that, I'd just like to pass it around a little bit if anybody's got any other statements, concerns, opinions. You're the ones who made this out, so.
So I would like to go on previous history, being a board member. But the communications and the leadership and consistency of that shows, I do like it.
I'd agree if, based on our audit and the financial side of it, I think we're looking pretty positive on that side as well. I think we're doing a real good job.
Brenda?
I was just waiting to say something nice. No, I think Beth's done a really good job. I think their morale has improved. I think it feels like the budget is more under control. Didn't have to go out for a referendum last year. And the communication seems a lot more transparent. And just being on the board, I feel much better informed and much more part of the process. So, thank you.
We very much need a referendum. It'll be next year.
Well, not to say we don't need that,
Right.
but I mean, we were able to get by this year.
And that's a different agenda item for another time.
Exactly.
Pat?
I concur with everybody. I mean, I know how I rated her, and so those numbers fall right in where I put her, and you know, I've had the pleasure of working with her now for the last several, 7, 8 years, and feel very confident with her moving forward as our superintendent.
Kurt?
Well, I guess I'd agree with everybody. I think it's been a very open administration. Communication has been great. I think our financials look very good at this time. To say that it's perfect, it's never perfect. I think we're always getting better. People are improving as they go. But I think in general, the whole administration has done a great job. And thank you for that.
See, we should have gotten together, at least had one bad cop, though. Good cop, bad cop.
Well, Bob's not that.
Yeah, Bob's not that.
No, you know, I think everybody said what needs to be said here. You know, it's been a trying couple of years, you know. Among the things we did was we have one less administrator. So some of these expenditures that we're going through right now are as a result of that. I think, again, I've made the statement before, the community has told us that we're not streamlined enough. And so I think this is one of the areas in which we have been, and it means that our principals, as well as our superintendents, dig in, and there's a lot of consortium thinking, together thinking, and I don't think we would be able to move forward as effectively as we have without this collaboration. So everybody seems to be involved, department heads are involved, so it's not without its trials, but at the same time, it's worked out pretty well. But it puts a lot on our admin's plates, and so, you know, by okaying a couple of these issues tonight, we're assisting them as best we can. So overall, I would say what you all have said. And I think the next point is, it would have to be after the first of the year, but we should begin negotiations. The superintendents, as a rule, are looking at 3-year contracts. That's yet to be determined, but we really can't start the process without knowing who our negotiations committee will be. That will get named at the first meeting in January, so it doesn't seem prudent for us to begin that at this time, but wait until we know who the negotiators are going to be. But it sounds like you're all prepared to have her taken that interim status off and become our permanent superintendent. I would say that's a good idea. So, again, I don't think the review is much more than a discussion item. It doesn't seem to have any action behind it. So, Beth, congratulations. That's, you know, you step into big shoes. We've had Mr. McGuire and Mr. Sesker, who were very good in their capacity, and we owe them a debt. And you've done a very nice job with our finance. I know that's not one of your fun points, but it's really, it's what drives our school right now, and sad to say, you know. We used to have the conversation on what's more important, curriculum or finance. We can't drive the bus without money. And we're finding that it makes things a lot tighter, but you know, congratulations on your input and your direction here.
Well, all I know is that superintendents don't do well without teachers and support, and Lori and Josh and this admin team. I mean, we are a family, and there's just no superintendent out there that will tell you they do a good job if they don't have those people underneath them. So we are a team, and we are a family, and we're all in this together. So there's no need to thank me. It's teachers coming together. They're creative. Everything that I present to you comes to me from the teachers and the admin team and my office that works on crazy, crazy hours and does amazing things. So, I mean, thank you for the nice evaluation, but we all know that evaluations are based off of the people you work with. And so, great team in Cannon Falls. I would never have taken an intern position. Who's crazy enough to do that? I mean, nobody, if you don't have the team that is here. So, and really this board in general, you guys have supported me when I was an assistant principal, a principal, and now superintendent. You've always had my back. And so I think that's how you get people to stay and want to do great things for schools. So you're a part of that too.
Okay, thank you. Moving forward, reports. Board members? Anything for the cause? Student report.
KV Rock.
Well, it's been a while.
Yes.
But nice to be back. In putting together my report, I was actually really surprised because normally after a break there's sort of a lull and there's not a lot going on. But that's quite the opposite this time. There's a decent number of stuff going on. We're preparing for winter formal. Student Council is working on that in the next couple of weeks. National Honor Society has been really active recently. They did bell ringing for the Salvation Army outside the bakery last Saturday. And that was pretty much all day. They participated in the Feed My Starving Children community event, which I know a lot of churches also take place in. They're also planning, and I didn't even know about this, they're planning on helping with the children's holiday shopping spree at the elementary. And I'm not sure totally what that is, but I think it's some sort of kind of a Black Friday for the kids, I guess. And then as usual, there's the highway ditch cleanup, the same Saturday as Feed My Starving Children. We the People competition, the state competition is next week, next Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. We're planning, well, hoping, I should say, hoping to go and take another state title, which we missed last year, but hopefully we'll be able to bring back. The first basketball game is, I'm not sure, somebody might need to help me on Friday.
Girls play tomorrow at least, and boys and girls play Friday.
There's no, yeah, there's double.
Doubleheader,
on
boys
Friday.
and girls on
All right. Against Ellsworth, I believe, in Wisconsin.
Out here or over there?
Home,
Here.
yep. So that should be a nice sort of intro to both of those sports seasons. First wrestling tournament is away this Saturday. There's a humanities field trip that is planned for the Minneapolis Institute of Arts and Science Museum. We're going especially for the Terracotta Warrior exhibit, which I recommend in advance. One-act auditions, we have an old face for one. Mr. Burns has returned to direct the one-act this year. So hoping, as always, to take that as far as we can. And speech recruitment is beginning. The call-out meeting is also next week, December 4th. That's it.
Thank you. Okay. Item C, upcoming meetings. We've got regular board meeting coming up, and then truth and taxation on the 17th. So that's our next meeting, December 17th.
Only one in December.
Okay, at this time, the public is allowed to speak to anything concerning the school. Does anyone have any issues, any questions, any statements they'd like to make? Okay. I guess you guys weren't at our last meeting. It was brief. Do you have anything to add? Would you like to chime in at all? Was there anything?
Yeah.
You weren't on the reports list.
We noticed.
And you haven't been banished. You just missed your opportunity last time. I'm sorry, do you have
Well,
things that you...
you know, I'm glad we got this meeting here because the IMC is kind of finally, other than wines, completely put back together. So, you know, carpet is in. I hope as you came in, you noticed the new circulation desk that, thanks to the district office.
You're welcome.
And the tech masters donated the new couches, and things are finally completely back together, and it looks great. So thank you, Dave, for all the work you've done here, and thank you to the tech masters and to the district office for getting up there circulation desk for us. We appreciate that.
Gary?
You know, I'll touch a little bit on what Kaylee said with the children's shopping spree. That's going to be Saturday, December 8th. The PTO is putting on a pancake breakfast, and with that is I think the library, campus library is opening. Is that right?
Friends of the Library.
What's that?
The Friends of the Library.
Friends of the Library. So there's going to be a big book sale, which is what I think that shopping spree is all about. So looking forward to that. Hopefully you guys got the email of some pictures from the literacy night. That was an absolute blast. We had a lot of support. We had a lot of people show up. So that was a great night, and yeah.
I even had a student tell me that Mr. Bell was a better principal than me. He ran up to tell me that. He goes, "We like Mr. Bell. He's even better than you." Oh. No, it wasn't one of my own children.
So in closing, Beth made a real brief statement about referendum, and certainly that's something we're going to have to deal with sometime after the first of the year. And you know, the decisions about it are, you know, imminent, I would guess. But when you run a referendum, you get a lot of personal criticisms about how you run the operation. And it looks to be by an independent auditor that we school our children very well and very competitively. And I think the community needs to know that, needs to be reinforced that, because they can cite individual things about their perception of misspent monies and such, but in the end, this audit says we're doing a good job with the resources that we have. And it didn't come without a lot of pain to the district, and certainly, you know, we're only as good as the next biennium for our legislature, so we don't know what's forthcoming for us, but, you know, as a board, you've done a very good job of managing, and again, that management comes from your decisions, and it also comes from our administrations and how they've pulled together in order for us to continue to operate. But having expenditures per pupil that are decidedly less than some other districts of our size is a real positive thing. We'd like to do more, but at this point in time, we're doing the best we can, and I think the community needs to hear it, and they need to see it, and the audit is public information. So anyone that would feel so moved to have a copy can certainly get a copy. We might charge you for it, because that's kind of where we are right now, but this was good news, about as good as it can be under the circumstances, so congratulations to the admin as well. Having said that, I think we're finished for this evening, so I would look for a motion.
Wait, I have a question.
Oh,
What
sorry.
time is the truth and taxation? Is that at 6 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay.
Start off with that.
The regular time right here. All right.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'll move to adjourn.
I would look for a motion to adjourn, said Brenda.
I'll second.
And Matt has seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.